I am very pleased to introduce our keynote speaker. Tarus Balog is the founder and CEO of the Open NMS Group, which is a 100% open source monitoring project that he assumed responsibility for in 2002 as maintainer. What many of you may not realize, this is Tarus's third time speaking with us, but his first time keynoting. And we're very pleased to have him as a keynote because one of his earlier presentations is among the most popular in LinuxFest history. I remember folks filtering out the door because there wasn't room to stand in the room. Tarus is going to be talking about the history of OpenNMS and provide examples of how you can apply the lessons he's learned running the company and starting your own business. Please give me a big hand and a warm welcome to Tarus.
Ohio LinuxFest. I have a very soft spot in my heart for this conference. I am also painfully aware that I am the only thing standing between you and beer. So I'm hoping that I can make this an interesting talk before we get to the after party. Like I mentioned, this is one of the first conferences I ever spoke at, and I'm from North Carolina. Usually, Chicago. So anyway, I'm from North Carolina, and we have a Linux group called TriLife, the Triangle Linux Users Group. And I can remember back in 2010, everyone was all excited because Ohio LinuxFest. I'm like, but we're in North Carolina. They're like, yes, Ohio LinuxFest. So we actually rented a van and came up here. It was a great time. And so I love this conference, and I haven't been able to make as many conferences as I used to, and I really wanted to come to Ohio. And when they offered me a keynote, I was like, I want to do something special. And of all the talks I've ever given, the one most people are interested in is how to start an open source business. Because it's like, okay, you're selling free software. You know, how do you do that? How do you make money selling free software? And so this talk has never been given before, and it'll probably be the last time I ever get it. But I wanted to go over the history of my company and kind of give you the background on why I got started in it, the challenges we faced, and some of the rewards we had. So I hope you guys find it interesting. Now, I call this a brief history of an open source company. I wanted to do something really clickbaity, like the top 10 things about an open source company. Number 3. Or, OpenNMS has been around for 15 years. You should see it now. But I'm a big Stephen Hawking fan, so I said I'd do a brief history of an open source company. And I'm anything but brief. So there is some irony still in there. We just had a bunch of lightning talks, which were really good. And when lightning talks first came out, I said, I want to do one of them 5-minute lightning talks. And all my friends started laughing at me. They said, dude, you can't introduce yourself in 5 minutes. And I think I'm probably running on about 3.5 right now. So anyway, before we get started, I'm a geek, so I want to define some terms. Yay. So that's what we are. Communication is based upon mutual understanding. So let's talk about what I mean by free software. So everyone has probably seen this, free software. Richard Stallman was instrumental in producing what are called the 4 freedoms. And basically, if software meets these 4 requirements, it's considered free software. Now, the downside of the free software definition is words like, in freedom 2, so you can help your neighbor. Or freedom number 3, you can give the whole community a chance to benefit. That's communism. We're not a communist country. Isn't that communism? So a lot of people see that, and they kind of groused over this idea of free software. That's just communism. Well, a number of other people came along, and they came up with what they call open source software. And they came up with the open source definition. It's much longer. There's 10 items instead of 4. And in some ways, the open source definition is a little more free than the free software definition, in the sense that it expressly says you can't discriminate against fields, you can't discriminate against who runs it. So you can't say, oh, it's free software unless you're a defense contractor, something like that. Now, people use open source and free software in different situations. And Now, I just want to say, for the purpose of this talk, open source is free software. I'm going to use both terms interchangeably. Now, a lot of people when speaking, they'll say free software it adds a social justice component to it. It's that help your neighbor bit. And I'm not going to argue with that. Open source is more commercially businessy, and free software is more help thy neighbor. But I just wanted to say, for the purposes of this conversation, we are going to talk about, I'm going to use both of them interchangeably. And it becomes important when I'm talking about making money in an open source or free software business, because you can't really sell the software. It's free and open. And if you're doing open core or something like that, I'm not here to talk about that. People, back in the day, I used to rail against anyone who said, I'm open source, but here's our enterprise version. And it really bothered me because I'd come to shows and people would come up to our booth and say, well, yeah, but how much is your enterprise version? I'm like, we only have one version. It's the enterprise version, and it's free. So, to talk about where I got started in telecom, back when telecom and datacom were actually separate industries. You may not know this now with all your Skype-y, Snapgram-y stuff. But I worked for Northern Telecom, and I always got involved in how do we take this legacy switch manufacturer and connect it to this new thing called PC. And so I ended up doing network management from a very, very early age in my professional career. And by the middle of 1990s, I was doing a lot of software. And these were, I actually had to go look some of these up. Like, they say the internet is forever, but it really isn't. Some of these logos I had to dig out of like old PDFs that I had laying around in my inbox. Because my inbox is still. But I used a lot of tools from companies like HP and IBM. And I never sold it. I can't close a door, much less a deal, but I love talking about technology. And my job was, after the deal was done, I would go in and try and get all these disparate tools to work together. And so I wrote a lot of glue. Back then we had this language called Perl. And we would write a lot of these Perl programs to tie all this stuff together. And we didn't really have change control. We didn't have the stuff we take for granted today. And so let's say I'd write a little tool that would say, if I'm looking at a device in HP OpenView, I could pull up the Concord Network health reports, the performance data on this thing. And it would work fine until Concord came out with a new release. And they would add a new option to whatever command that they were using, and it would break, and we'd get brought in to fix it and stuff like that. And so it was frustrating from the glue standpoint. And it was also frustrating from a functionality standpoint, because I might be using Netcool. And it's like, man, if it could do this one thing just a little bit different, it would make my life so much easier. But there's absolutely no way to see the code. And on top of it, I once did a Micronews installation where the license fee was $1.1 million. So think about this. You spend $1.1 million and you get an email with some numbers on it. You don't get a McLaren F1, you get an email with some numbers on it that unlock the code. So some people on his acquaintances work for this company called YourEye on the network. And they were the ones behind this project called OpenNMS. And the idea was, we're going to make an open source version of all these other tools. And that really appealed to me, because I'm like, hey, we can now formalize this glue we used to write. And we can tie it all together, and it's cheaper because there's no cost involved. When I worked with HP tools, they would say for every $1 a customer spends on a software license, you can expect $8 in revenue from service. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get rid of that $1. So the software's free, so you put that $1 in your pocket. And because it's open source, I can deploy it twice as fast. So it only costs you $4 instead of $8. And I'm like, that sounds like a good business. I mean, I used Windows 2000. This was back in the early 2000s. I didn't know anything about open source. I mean, I installed Red Hat, but that was a server thing. I wasn't doing anything on, that was the year of the Linux desktop. But I did not mean to go there. Anyway, so I got brought on board. Now, Oculine's business model was they sold an appliance with OpenNMS on it and some proprietary code. And they brought me on board to build a business around the OpenNMS piece. I got real excited about this. And I started on September 10th, 2001. to work on September 11th, 2001, listening to NPR in my pickup truck, and I called my wife, because we still had cell phones back then, and I called her up and said, hey, I heard a plane hit the World Trade Center. And we thought it was like a Cessna, at least I thought it was like a little plane. So I got to work, we watched the towers fall, and then we just looked at each other and said, I'm going home. I'll see you tomorrow. And so it wasn't exactly the best time to start a business. But we persevered, we managed, and so I started in September. By May of 2002, a couple things happened. We had four OpenNMS support customers, one of which I still have, which I thought was kind of cool. We released OpenNMS 1.0. Milestone. We have OpenNMS 1.0. Yay! And Oculan ran out of money. So Oculan was VC backed. And if any of you have watched that documentary called Silicon Valley on HBO, you kind of know how the VC industry works. I live that. I mean, it's really sad. It's a little too close to home. I have to drink a lot when I watch it. But VCs want you to spend money. I have a friend who had a VC software company, and he raised like $5 million, and he put it in the bank. And he gets his bank statement, and there's the interest. I mean, even at 0.0001% or whatever you get now from the bank, it was a significant amount of money. And he was saying, look at all the money we made on interest, and the VCs are like yelling at him. It's like, I can make way more than that if I just invest it somewhere else. He says, I'm giving it to you to spend. And their whole model was spend as fast as you could until you run out, and then we'll reevaluate. Well, they ran out. And the VC said, look, we want to give you another $5 million, but we don't like any of this open source crap. So we're not doing that. You own the copyright to the code, so we can publish it any way we want. Now, you can never put the genie back in the bottle. If you release something in open source, they can't change their mind, but they can say, oh, from here on out, all development we do will be closed source. And that's exactly what Raffle did. Now, remember, I got into this for the potential. It was a business thing. Like, look, $8, $4, this makes business sense. So I went to Steve Jobs, who was the CEO at the time. I went to his office and said, give me $1. I want to be the OpenNMS guy. And he kind of looked at his watch and said, hey, if you're off my payroll by Friday, we'll sprinkle water on you, and you're the OpenNMS guy, and we'll give you a couple of servers and wish you luck. That was the easy part. Show of hands, how many people are married? Well, if you're the major breadwinner in a household, and you decide to quit your job and sell free software, you might want to discuss it with your spouse. I was informed in no uncertain terms. The decisions like this are a we decision and not a you decision. We celebrate 25 years in April, so we managed to live by that. So anyway, so I was like, oh crap, I want to start my own company. I want to sell free software. So the name of the company was Sortova Consulting Group, which is named after my farm. My farm is Sortova Farm. And so I registered Sortova. And I made sure that didn't mean like, monkey butt in some weird language. I did Google that. Although OpenNMS sounds like OpenNMS. So it's like, I'm very aware of stuff like that. So I started Sortova Consulting. And I thought it was, for someone who didn't have any graphic skills whatsoever, I made a little guy, and he had a hat, and for 4th of July, the hat was like red, white, and blue, and it was a pumpkin and Halloween and stuff like that. So I created my website. Now, free software, it's free. Theoretically, you can sell it once. Because you can, there's nothing that says, hey, I can't charge you to access this code, but once you have it, you have the right to distribute it for free. So theoretically, you can sell it once. So the business around open source is usually some other business, like services. And in our case, it was support. People don't buy support or consulting. People buy products. So one of the first things I did, this is all from archive.org, I had to dig this out for this presentation, is I productized my offerings. And so here you have, we have our standard support subscription, we have installation support, blah, 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 blah. And we have prices, and then we have also the same thing for consulting. I had some projects, and I made up funny names, like, for if you wanted to get started, I call it the Greenlight Project. What's that? Well, we're going to send 2 people fresh out of college who will pretend to understand your complex business. And then they're going to write up a report about it. And it's going to fill about 50 grand worth. I mean, it's got pretty graphs and all these paragraphs. And the truth of the matter is 95% of that report was boilerplate. But you'd go and you do a requirements analysis. Someone would pay $50,000 and you say, here you go, here's your fancy report. They're like, great, where's my network management solution? Oh, we got to do a gap analysis. Well, what's that? And so, well, we're going to take your requirements and then we're going to analyze what you have and we'll determine what the gap is. And again, same situation, 2 weeks, blah, blah, $50,000. And what we found is that, look, we can address 95% of people's needs in a week. It's like we show up, we configure OpenMS, we show you how to use it, we point at your network, we do discovery, blah, 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 blah. So we have this thing called a green light project. It's like we show up, it's a week, and it includes support. Now notice on both of these, I can't really see on this monitor, but I have custom support and custom consulting. And that's where a lot of our business came from. They would say, hey, we want to do this, and we go, okay, well, we'll tweak it a little bit. But by having products, there's one I never sold, but I call it chock full of help. And it was an idea of, because when people wanted consulting, they would come to you and you have to go through this big PO process. Well, I need you to help me solve that problem. Well, that'll be about 10 hours of consulting. Okay, well, now I've got to issue a PO. And I finally said, well, why don't you just give me $20,000 and I'll give you 20 hours or whatever in the kitty, and then you can just build it. We'll just use that to build new stuff. And I never really did that, but the idea was, let's go ahead and productize your service offerings, because that's what people buy. Now, you notice here, I also have discounted price. Now, I cut off the top of this. For nonprofit schools, stuff like that, I offered a discounted price. We don't do that anymore. Because when you're a services business, those organizations will work you as hard, if not harder, than your other customers. And I feel bad about it. It's like I'd like to give a break to schools or nonprofits, but we just can't. Because it's going to cost you, as a services company, the same amount, if not more work. So everyone pays the same, and we publish our prices online. Because a lot of companies will have buyers who get incentivized on what kind of discount they can get. And it's really hard to say you don't get any discount. Because I'm not going to penalize you for being large, and I'm not going to reward you for being small. Because from my standpoint, it's going to be the same amount of work. And the final thing about this, these prices are considerably less than what we charge now. Part of that is OpenMS is 15 years older. It's way more powerful. The kind of stuff we get involved with takes a lot more time. But the other thing is never compete on price. Do not undervalue what you're doing. You're doing important stuff. You're providing value to customers. And that's why, when we came and said, well, HP Open costs all this much, I have to be a fraction of that. And the problem is you can still charge as much if you're better. And so I always stress, you have total cost of ownership, compete on it. But don't be the bargain basement person. Okay, marketing. I'm wearing an OpenMS shirt. There was a time in my life where I wore nothing but OpenMS shirts. On planes, in elevators, when I went to lug meetings, etc., I was promoting OpenMS. Once I had the OpenMS fave icon shaved into the back of my head. Now, I travel a lot for business, so occasionally I get upgraded. Get that in your head and walk into a first-class cross-country flight and look at the looks you get. From the people in the businesses, what's that on your head? It's the logo of my software company. Then they change. Oh, wow, that's kind of cool. But when they think you're making some kind of statement, it's like, so never stop, being here. I'm not here to sell you guys on OpenMS, but the idea is now you've heard it, it's stuck in your head. Maybe you'll go to OpenMS.org and look at it. But anyway, do it. We had a bunch of lightning talks just before this, and someone said, get involved, go to your lab, speak. Do that. That's one great way to market your product. The other thing, so in my analysis of successful software and technology business, one thing that you need when you start out is a sugar daddy. Or to be fair, a sugar mom. The idea is, I love this picture, I just stole it off the internet, but the idea is, when we started, we had one customer who was kind of ready, they kind of bought in to OpenMS, and they paid for a lot of custom consulting and things like that. It's a company called Rackspace Managed Hosting. They're actually a sponsor of this conference. Great company, and they got started. And so many of my friends, I have a friend who did a lot of work with a company called Bros Welcome. And they were the ones who kind of paved until he could get his product up and get everything built up. And so, this isn't a requirement, but I would look for it. If you're trying to say, when do I quit my day job and go into this full time, one of the things to look for is, do you have a company who can support you for half a year or something, just so you can mature the product and get things going. And again, that sugar daddy is also going to give you a lot of direction for where you're going, because almost all of our R&D in OpenMS comes from our customers. They'll sit there and say, hey, I need this feature. And we're like, okay, we'll make it for X number of dollars. And they'll go, okay. It's never like, I didn't mean it to sound like, when Anakin Skywalker turns to the dark side. Come to the dark side, okay. It's usually a more involved process than that. But you can get your customers to pay for your product improvements, and then they benefit everybody, because if they apply to one customer, there's a good chance they apply to others. On the internet, no one knows how small you are. But you can have a website. One of the first things I did is make a website. It doesn't have to be a complex website, but you need a site that says who you are, what you do, and how to contact you. Because that's, to this day, I have the socials down at the bottom, so you might need a Facebook page, etc. as well, but you need a website. Code repository. We assume you're going to be working with some sort of code, either glue that you write to glue together a bunch of other open source projects, or an open source project yourself. Back in the day, we had this thing called SourceForge. Now it's GitHub. Just use GitHub. Everybody uses GitHub. If you want contributions, they're going to be on GitHub. Just use GitHub. Bug tracker. You can use GitHub. We use Jira, but GitHub is great. You want a trouble ticketing system? If you do support something that that your customers can open tickets and you can track. We use Request Tracker, which before Twitter was real easy to find. You just Google RT. But if you Google RT now, Request Tracker does not show up at all. And there's other ones like OTRS. There's a bunch of open source trouble ticketing systems. You might want a mailing list. One of the things we're struggling with right now is we have a number of mailing lists and a number of forums. And I propose, why don't we get rid of the mailing lists? Because the forums can send you a mail when someone updates it. And some people, I'm 51 years old, there's a lot of youngsters out there who just like the forums. And so, you got to worry about that. But you want some way that you can build this community that you're trying to deal with, and have like a historical record. Because you want Google to index it, so you're not always answering the same question over and over again. Accounting software. When we started OpenMS, we didn't have NewCache. From my understanding, NewCache is quite an accomplished double-entry accounting system. But we use QuickBooks. So we use QuickBooks Online. It's cheap, it's online. I hate the fact that my financials are in the cloud, but now that we have many more employees who need to see reports and stuff like that, it just makes it easier. That's the one of the few pieces of commercial software we use. There's a CRM system. I'm putting this up here now because when you're just starting out, it's the time to start thinking about these things. Because when you have 100 customers, adopting a CRM system is a pain. Because you've got to migrate data, you've got to dig up data, you've got to find it. We switched to Sweet CRM from Sugar CRM, and it was a bit of a pain. Because every contact, every customer we had made, we had to migrate that. So you want to start that, not necessarily day one, but toward the beginning when you're not so big. Because when you get big, it'll be a lot harder. And then finally, the socials. You need a Twitter account. I'm not on Facebook, but we do have an OpenMS Facebook page. Google Plus, if anyone remembers what that is. We are setting up a Mastodon server. Any Mastodon users? Yay, we got some Mastodon users. So there's a guy who got me into Ohio LinuxFest named Kevin Oddie. He's Mr. IPv6. And he's like, you need a Mastodon account. So I told my IT guy to spin up a server so that we can open it. So I should be on the Mastodon soon. It just didn't happen for this. But be thinking, again, most of your software needs can be met with open source software, which is kind of cool. In talking about community, so here I am. I'm basically a company of one since 2002. I lived and died on an IRC channel. So we have an OpenMS IRC channel. Now we've migrated to a tool called Mattermost. Anyone know Mattermost? It's an open source Slack clone. And so we have a gateway. So a lot of these OpenMS chat things is just the chat.openms.com talking to the IRC channel. But I did a lot of stuff on the IRC channel. We had mailing lists, which was kind of your non-temporal communications channel. And then we had your immediate communication channel on this list. From this list, I developed a ton of friendships because a lot of the people who work on OpenNMS are geographically dispersed. And I worked by myself, which is kind of hard for some people because, like, I knew the UPS guy by name. I knew the vet. Hey, how's it going? My wife would come home and I'm like, grab her. Did you talk to guys today? I'd go to the lug meeting and I'd stay like 2 hours in the parking lot talking to people, like, human contact. So I noticed on the IRC channel and the mailing list that we had some people who were contributing to OpenNMS. I didn't know them. I never met them. They were just a handle on the list. One of them is this guy named DJ Greger who's sitting back. And I said, I need some way to recognize these people who contribute to OpenNMS I don't pay. They don't work for me. And so I read about the Order of the Garter, which is a British knighthood. I crossed it with the idea of polo shirts. Like, we used to sell like black and white polo shirts. Well, this idea came to me in April where the Masters golf tournament. I'm not a golfer, but it happened on Easter and I was at home. We were watching the golf tournament and I was pretending like I missed that time. I've like never played the game of golf in my life and I'm complaining that you should. Well, when you win the Masters, they give you a 100 green jacket. So I came up with this idea of the Order of the Green Polo. And so what I did was I reached out to these people and said, hey, I'd like you to become more active members of the OpenNMS project. I said, I'll give you a green polo shirt that differentiates you from everybody else. You have to earn it. And I'll give you an OpenNMS email address, and I'll give you commit access to the project. And I forget how many were in that initial, we call it the OGP. The initial OGP was like 8. And so these people were donating, maybe 5 to 10 hours. They were involved maybe 5 to 10 hours a week. They started, 10, 20 hours a week. And I was like, for someone who was a company of one, this was real important. So this was in 2004. In 2005, I said, let's get together for a hackathon. I call it Dev Jam, or Developers Jamboree. So I live on an old farmhouse, and I said, okay, you get to Pittsboro, North Carolina. I'll pick you up, I'll feed you, and we'll just spend a week hacking it. 4 people show up. One of them was DJ. And so every year now, we have a developers conference. And so here's a picture of several developers conferences that we've had. We get together, we have anywhere between 20 and 40 people show up, and we spend the week hacking with OpenNMS. And the Order of the Green Polo, if you're an Order of the Green Polo member, you end up getting it for free. The company will pay you, will pay your expenses to come and spend the week. And so it's like outside of Christmas, it's like one of my favorite times of the year. Actually, sometimes it's better than Christmas. My family's much larger than it used to be, and it can be stressful. But we like, I love Dev Jam. So again, this idea of building your community, giving back to your community, and rewarding people who contribute is important. Now, at some point in time, unless you make the conscious decision of being a company of one, and there's nothing wrong with that, at some point in time, you're going to need to hire people. And I got to hire, it was in 2004 that my business partner, David Huston, and I, we rebranded Sortova Consulting Group as the OpenNMS Group Incorporated. And that's the commercial company, it's OpenNMS.com. That's the commercial company behind the maintains the OpenNMS project now. Now, the beautiful part about hiring, that's out of order, so I'm going to talk about hiring and I'm going to come back. So, the time came to hire. I hired directly out of the community. Hiring for me is the easiest thing. The decision to decide to hire someone is difficult. But once we can hire somebody, I like to hire out of the community because these guys did this for free, and now I'm going to offer them money. It's like eating an ice cream sundae and finding money at the bottom. It's like, woo! And so I wrote this article for OpenSource.com back in 2015, and I kind of talked about it. When I was going to school, I graduated college in 1991. I should have graduated in 1988, but I graduated in 1991. I'm not and all that, 1991 was kind of a weak year for jobs, and the only people out of my graduating class who had jobs on graduation that wasn't Microsoft support were people who had internships or co-ops. Because as a hiring person, I look to what have you done? And if I've got 2 candidates and one guy says, well, I have a B+ average and I took these courses and here's my senior project. And I got another guy who comes up and says, well, here's my GitHub handle, here's my commits, here's the communities I'm involved in, here's the stuff I'm running. Guess who I'm going to hire? Because I don't care what courses you took, what did you do? And some guy was saying that, the guy with the ears, where are you? He gave a little, there you are. You gave a lightning talk, and it's like, didn't have a degree. We had a corporate, like, all hands. I've got guys all around the country, and we were sitting around, and I looked around and said, raise your hand if you have a 4-year degree. And less than half my guys did. I didn't know that. I can. I knew what they could do based upon their output. And the story I want to finish with on this topic is we have a guy who works for us named Alejandro. Alejandro used to live in Caracas, Venezuela. And Caracas is more dangerous than Baghdad. You can Google that, and there's a few people who tell you why they take Caracas. He was commuting 2 hours each way, so he spent 4 hours a day commuting. He got involved with OpenMS, became OGP, would fly him to Dev Jam, and I ended up hiring him. I found out how much he made. He said, look, I'll double it, and I'll put money in the bank account, you deal with the taxes. In the United States, we call that a 1099. That worked out. We hired a lawyer, we got an H-1B, got him and Carolina into the country, and as of March, they have their permanent residency card, so they have green cards. Yeah. If OpenMS goes away tomorrow, I can point to that and say, we did that. And it was all because of free and open source software. So I highly talk about that. So, okay, that's all the good stuff. Let's talk about bad stuff. Okay. I'm talking about schools. I've told these stories kind of individually. This is the first time I've put them all together. But, so, I used to be a big Apple fanboy. So I started OpenMS in 2002. And in 2003, we started making some money. So I said, I need a new laptop. And I noticed at these love meetings, people were coming in with this thing from Apple. They ran something called OS 10, which was kind of like Linux-y, but not quite the same. And so when they announced the 12-inch PowerBook, I bought one. And so we had, there was this whole interest in OS 10, and we're like, let's put OpenMS on OS 10. And one of my guys, Ben Reed, he was a big Apple guy, so he ported OpenMS to OS 10. Now the problem was, at the time, Jaguar was out, and it only supported Java 1.0, and we required 1.2, because it just didn't work on 1.0. I mean, we needed certain things. So I was very, very simple. So at the time, unless you had a developer's license, you couldn't get the JDK. You could only get 1.0. So we were kind of waiting until it became generally available before we really announced. Rail.com out in California. I don't know if they're still around. I didn't look at that. I dug this out with archive.org. They basically, we're OpenMS for Mac. Here's our discussion groups, and here's the 1.1.0 alpha. I mean, we didn't have a 1.1 product. Now, granted, if you read that, it's actually the version of the installer. But it was like, what do you mean? You can't run on Mac natively because we require this one. We found out what they had done is removed all of the code that required 1.2 and kind of created their own version of OpenMS. And I was like, that's important. Yeah, that makes it go. So I talked to this guy, Mark Murphy, who ran this company, and I said, look, the first thing we did was, let's try to get these guys as part of our community. Like, hey, it's wonderful that you're interested in packaging OpenMS for OS 10. We just have some problems we'd like to work out. It's like, what version you're running? Could you use our discussion list and not your own discussion list, so it's all under the project umbrella, et cetera? And let's just say he wasn't a very nice guy. It was obvious that it's open source. I can do whatever I want to. And I kind of pointed him to Mozilla has a nice little fact on there why Firefox binaries can only be built by Mozilla. That's why on Debian it's Iceweasel. They have a rule. They basically said, look, we own this. And there's a very good business reason. Had Macworld checked out their version of OS 10, now granted, this was on the first page of Google if you typed OpenMS. If they had checked out this and it didn't work because it required Java 1.2, bugs we had fixed, that would really, really damage our market. Well, there is a way to protect yourself. It's called trademark. So I registered your trademark, then approached this guy again once we got the trademark and said, hey, and he still wouldn't change anything, so I hired a lawyer for the first time. I actually did the trademark on my own. If you're cheap like I am, you can actually go, and there's enough stuff online that'll tell you how to go and how to do this thing. So I did the process, took several months. And then we did, the first time I hired a lawyer with OpenMS was to do a cease and desist letter to this Mark Murphy guy, and he finally took it down. And I felt there was a big loss there. It was a failure on my part because it would have been nice to capture this guy, but it just wasn't going to happen. And you guys are smart enough to know that happens in open source projects. There are forks, and there's reasons for them. But for us, anyway, but importance of trademarks. So if you decide that you're going to do a product, get the trademark, because that is a marketing thing. It's one of the few things you own as a creator of open source software that you can control is your market exposure based upon the trademark.
You're really lucky he didn't get the trademark.
Yeah. I mean, we filed it, and we had prior art and other stuff like that too. But yes, we were really, and I let the trademark expire, and so I didn't do it again. Now I hired a lawyer. There's a few things. I got lawyers, all kinds of lawyers. I'm about to talk about more lawyers. But I didn't use lawyers when I started. I incorporated on my own, and I did the trademark on my own. And I don't recommend it. Getting a lawyer to do it, it'll cost you between $500 and $1,000. You should probably do it. Now, the low point in OpenMS history involves this company called Cydia. So I'm on the IRC channel one day, and someone said, "Hey, you need to check out this Cydia Watchtower product." And I looked at it, went to the web page, glanced around, proprietary software monitoring. Oh, we're going to take them out. OpenMS, open source, we're better. And they go, no, look at it. And so I started looking at it, and so this is OpenMS from that era. And you see, we've got this little categories chart with availability here. Look, there's a little categories chart here with availability. We found out that Cydia took OpenMS, made a proprietary product out of it, and violated the license. Now, at this time, Cydia had raised multi-millions of dollars from a VC known as Homeland. It's like home glad to win something but Homeland. And the first thing I learned is no one cares. Now, Karen Sandler had to leave because it's the Jewish holidays, but Karen Sandler would probably disagree with me. Like, the software freedom conservancy cares. But very few people. Judges don't care. Businesses don't care if someone's violating your code. But there is one person who does care. His name's Evan Mobley. He runs the Software Freedom Law Center, so I contacted Evan Mobley. And I said, hey, help us out. What does it take? I want this to end, And so it turns out the Software Freedom Law Center has in their charter, they are not able to represent for-profit companies. And we are a for-profit company. So they founded a company called Mobley & Ravisher, being a business partner, and we were their first client. And the lawyer they assigned to my case was Karen Sandler. So there's a nice little tie-in here. So that I've known Karen when we were dealing with this. So Evan calls up Jamie Lerner, who was the CEO of Cydia, and says, hey, you're violating GPL, we're going to sue you, you need to fix this. And Jamie said, if we're violating GPL, we're violating the Oculan code, not your code. We knew this wasn't true, but it's hard to prove. And again, we're like a four-person company this time. So you don't, and since you don't own that copyright, you have no recourse. So I started doing some research. Oculan closed its doors in 2004. Its IP bounced around and ended up at this company in New Jersey called Raritan. Probably most known for remote keyboard access, KVM services, etc. like that. So I contacted Raritan and said, hey, let's go sue these people. And they were like, yeah, let's do it, yeah. Well, it turned out Raritan was being investigated by the Software Freedom Law Center for violating the GPL. They had modified an old version of Bash very slightly, but they didn't publish their changes. So I spent a year of my life acting as a go-between because of there was no way that Evan Mobley could represent Raritan and the Software Freedom Law Center in a lawsuit because it's a conflict of interest. So I had to spend a year getting their conflict resolved, and then Evelyn could go to work. And so once that happened, Evelyn went to work, and Cydia closed its doors. So before we could get a settlement, or anything in that matter, Cydia closed its doors. And it was kind of sad, because I'm reading on the forums, it's like people had just sent them paid checks, like the renewals and support and software licenses, and then they shut their doors, and let's say ran to the bank and canceled the check. There was no recourse. But one of the good things that came out of this is I'm not a very smart man, but when I wrote the agreement between us and Raritan concerning any future settlement, I put in, if we get a settlement from Cydio, Raritan will give us the copyright to Open NMS. If not, Raritan will sell us the copyright to Open NMS. So David, my business partner, and I, we mortgaged our houses and wrote a very large check to Raritan, and we got the copyright to Open NMS, and they got a right to use lifetime royalty-free license to use Open NMS code. So we brought all of the code under Open NMS. Now, copyright is a big thing within open source communities, and copyright assignments, things like this. So I did what any smart person would do. I went to our community. And I said, I ordered the green polo mainly. And I said, how are we going to handle this? Because if this happens in the future, if someone steals Open NMS code, I don't want to have to wait a year to go after it. And DJ was the one who suggested that we adopt the Sun Contributors Agreement, which is now called the Oracle Contributors Agreement. But the idea is that it's the idea of dual copyright. So if you contribute code to an open source project that uses this, you assign, there's two steps. First of all, you say you have the right to the code you're contributing, which is an important both mental step and CYA step, because it's like, he said he had right, if he didn't, we'll remove it. But the second thing was you grant us copyright. So the Open NMS group owns 100% copyright to Open NMS. But if you write a piece of code, there's nothing preventing you from contributing that to Zabbix or anything else like that, because you own it too. It's kind of like if two authors write a book. If two authors write a book, well, one of them can write a sequel, and they have a right to use those characters and stuff because it's dual copyright. Everyone's like, hasn't been proven in court. Well, it's so obvious. It doesn't. No court cases come up against it yet. But anyway. So copyright's important. So you've got employees. I talked about hiring Alejandro. Well, eventually you got to pay them. They kind of like that. Again, I didn't use any. I used tax tables when we were starting out. I manually did payroll. Again, don't recommend this to anybody. Get a payroll service. They're actually quite cheap. Again, I'm very stingy. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do payroll. And this is kind of an example. It's like we did monthly payroll because I wanted to do it once every 30 days. And I hate February. I don't know why. I was like, oh, damn, it's payroll again. It's only short by like 2 days. But I was like, anyway, you can go through and figure out, depending on the paycheck, how much you withhold, and you have to do that. But I just put this up here to say, go and get a payroll service. You'll thank me. Home Care Act. But you could go to Blue Cross Blue Shield or whoever and get individual insurance. For those of you who don't know, there are things called insurance brokers. And they will look at your needs, figure out, offer you plans, and then they'll go and shop and they'll handle all of it. So talk to anyone else you know in small business, find out who their insurance broker is, if they like them, use them, when it becomes time to get benefits. One of my employees, Jeff, came up to me and says, I want a 401k. And being the great manager I am, I said, well, give me a business case, tell me how much it's going to cost, blah, 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 blah. So he found one at Costco. I don't think they offer this anymore, but you can get it for a bit. Exclusive pricing for Costco members. So we literally signed up our 401k with ShareBuilder via Costco. Because it turned out to be like $70 a month, and we figured out the whole system, and so we did that. So again, think about, you want to offer things. I run a people-oriented business, so I want to make sure they're happy. So I want as many benefits as we can, and within reason, of course. And the idea is I find interesting ways to provide them. So I'm winding down. We're almost here. So people will come up to you and they'll say, you got to have a business plan. And this is usually coming. A business plan is a document setting up business future objectives, blah, blah, blah. And this is important. You got to know what you're going to do. Are you going to do services and integrate open source projects, or are you going to manage your own open source product yourself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? The business plan we came up with was really revolutionary. We've been around for 15 years. And so I was like, spend less money than you earn. Now, we have plans for how we want to move in the future and things like that are somewhat formalized. But the reason, and it's kind of a joke, but the reason is, what you want to do is, you don't want to let anything stop you from starting your business. Because people say, wow, I got a website, I have this, and I have benefits, and I have this, and I can't, and I'm trying to work a regular job, and so I'll never do this. Well, with that attitude, yeah, I just want to say, if you think you have a great idea and you can productize that, do it, and then worry about it. And focus on things like spend less money than you earn. I talked about payroll. For the first year of my life, I didn't have a salary. I was on 80% commission. basically anything that came in the door, and I had a $300 month once. Anything that came in the door, I gave myself 80%, and the other 20% was for payroll taxes and incidentals, like my cell phone. And in the entire first year of my business, we spent $5,000 savings. So it is possible, again, if you focus on spending less money than you earn. I flew Southwest. I expensed as many of the travel expenses I could back to customers and built it in as part of the products and things like that. Now, we actually live in a golden age of open source in the fact that you have a couple of other options which didn't occur or didn't exist for us. So what is the most successful open source company? Thank you. Red Hat. OpenMS was actually started because we're in Raleigh, we're right outside of Raleigh, and Red Hat was in Raleigh, and it was kind of this idea put in place by Red Hat. About 2 years ago, we adopted the Red Hat model for OpenMS. One of the problems we ran into was it was taking us about 18 months to do a major release. And part of that was, our business was supported, so we were real cautious about adding any kind of new features or doing anything that might break, that might ruin our customer experience, and then we would have to support. Say someone contributed something that used a technology we weren't familiar with. Well, these people aren't our employees, so I can't the customer just opened a support ticket, call this guy and say, fix your bug. So I have to have this stuff in here. And so we were trying to find a better way. Plus, I found out people are willing to pay for stability. And so we kind of adopted the Red Hat model. We came up with OpenMS Horizon, because Horizon's always moving. And that was the idea where we would go, and that was our, I don't want to call it community release, but that was the cutting edge release, all the new features. And in the first year that we did this, in the first 16 months, we had 5 major releases. So we ended up taking the 18-month release cycle down to 3 to 4 months, which was huge because we ended up putting so many new features in OpenMS because we could. Now, prior to that, we used to have a stable release, a production release, and we did the whole old kernel thing. So .2, .4, .6, that was stable, and .3, .5, .7, that was development. No one uses development release. So quite frequently, we would release, not quite frequently, enough to make me upset. We would release something, and 24 hours later, we had this Madagascar cockroach-sized bug we had to fix. And so we came out with .1 or .2 of what's going on. So what we did was we said, okay, we're going to have Horizon, which is the cutting-edge release, and then we're going to have Meridian. And Meridian only gets released once a year. And major releases once a year. It does point releases whenever they're needed. And then we basically cherry-pick all the features we think are stable back into Meridian. And Meridian is a subscription service. People pay us to access the code. Now we publish it under the AGPL. Now I left the whole licensing discussion out of this, but we ended up licensing OpenMS under the Pharaoh GPL, which is about as copyleft as you can get. I mean, it's to the copyleft of Jesus. I mean, it's way out there. We have some customers, really big customers, that have a rule. Thou shalt not put any AGPL software in the system. So we also made it available under a proprietary license. This proprietary license was written by a guy named Aaron Williamson, who also used to work with Karen Sadler, another great guy. And it's the AGPL version. But we don't call it the AGPL version 3. But it's basically, you get the same rights. If you check out Meridian, you can share it. Speaking of Red Hat, I had this thing I call the CentOS test. When I was dealing a lot with open core companies, I said, look, CentOS came out, and they were binary compatible packages to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. They basically took Red Hat Enterprise Linux, removed all the trademarks, recompiled it, and released it. If someone can do that with your product, you're open source. Does it pass the CentOS test? If you have something hidden or some proprietary extension and you can't do that, then you're not open source. And so no one's actually CentOS'd, I'll make a noun into a verb, CentOS'd Meridian yet, but they could. I mean, once you have this code. But the idea is, the way we price it is you get access to our repository. We think the prices are pretty reasonable. And the idea is we just make it easier for you. You get a stable release that doesn't get updated. We do point releases every month of Horizon. And a lot of our customers, once it's working, they don't want to change it. And we support Meridian for 3 years. So we had Meridian 2015, it's supported until 2018, Meridian 2016 is to 2019, etc. And the goal was, support is a business that doesn't scale very well. let's say for a support engineer, he can support 10 customers. Well, if I get 10 more customers, I have to go hire another support. It's, having to hire people is a good problem to have, but I remember this story, and I don't remember the game, but there was some developer wrote a game for the Xbox, and it was like a platformer, like you're trying to rescue the princess. Spoilers here, so trying to rescue the princess, but it was all time involved. And so you're basically like working backwards in time, and when you got to the end of the game, which was actually the beginning of the timeline, you realized you were the bad guy. So like the brute who was saving the princess was protecting the princess from you, because you were the bad guy. And this guy wrote this, he spent about $200,000 developing this, put it up on the Xbox marketplace, whatever, and kind of forgot about it, was sitting at Starbucks, opened up his bank account, and goes, oh, I'm a millionaire. Because it went viral, they had, dude, you really got to try this game. A whole bunch of people downloaded it. You can't do that with our traditional model. I think, wow, double your sales. I'm like, I don't have the people. Yeah, when do you double my sales? Maybe you think I'm 50% bigger. And so we thought Meridian would be a way that people could pay us to use OpenMS, because people want to give you money. They can pay us, they can get something in return. But we have a couple of Meridian-only customers, but what it mainly did was increase our revenue from our existing customers, which again doesn't suck. It makes it easier to support since we mainly support Meridian now, and so it's a more stable release. We're not dealing with these newer code, newer untested bugs, etc. Now the other option we have, which didn't exist for us, is the cloud, because people are willing to say they're willing to pay for ease of use. How many of you use WordPress? Well, not as good as I thought. I'm a WordPress nerd. I love WordPress. And then it's called the 5-minute install. You basically install a database, you add a user, you drop a tarball into your web root, you navigate to a web page, you fill in some forms, and boom, you've got a blog. Or you know what blogs are? I have 4 blogs. And it's like, I'm really old. Well, there was WordPress.com. And it used to be that they hosted pretty much the same code. It's like for $10 a month or whatever, you could have your blog hosted on WordPress.com, and they dealt with the backups and the upgrades and everything like that. And if you wanted to, you pressed a button, it could dump everything out, you could run it on your own instance. And so I think you can be true to your open source roots, offering a hosted version, as long as your customers have the ability to somewhat easily migrate to a privately run version. And I think that's a big selling point. I think we have customers right now, and we're moving toward an OpenMS as a service, if you will, model. Because we have some customers. We had one customer that we were monitoring their OpenMS, and they died. And we called them up and said, hey, your box is down. And they said, oh yeah, the hardware failure, we're not going to replace it. And we're like, what, don't you need monitoring? And they said, well, you had to tell us it was down, so we didn't know. And what they wanted to do now is they wanted all cloud. And so we are working toward a cloudy version of OpenMS, which can address these customers. Again, getting feedback from your customers is important. But this is great because this allows you to scale. I can't wait till this is like one of the things we do is when you send an SMP trap into OpenMS and OpenMS doesn't know what it is, it generates an unformatted event. I can't wait till we have like 100 users generating these unformatted events that I can then go format, and then we can use continuous delivery to go out and roll these things out so that every day people get better OpenMS, and we can do backups, and it will solve a lot of problems dealing with updates. Now, I mentioned the business plan. We also have to have a mission statement, a formal summary of the aims and goals, blah, 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 blah. Microsoft's mission statement for a long time was a computer on every desk. Now they got a computer in every pocket. But, our mission statement is something a little different because we came up with this one. Help customers have fun gaming. We're going to be the paradigm-shifting, synergy-building, market-leading company. No, we boiled it down to this. First of all, you help your customers. Sometimes it's not fun. Most of the time it is. If you can have fun and help your customers, you will make money. And one of the things that really bothers me about the tech industry today is the fact that on very rare cases, a couple of geeks get together, they write an app, and they're suddenly billionaires. And now everyone thinks it's all about the money. Well, he's a billionaire. And if you focus on money, if that's your reason, you're going to be. It's like, and I don't think you're going to be very successful. So I have this picture here. You know this guy? This is taken from 2007, where Steve Jobs is holding up the original iPhone 1. It's called the iPhone back then. And he didn't set out to make Apple the most valuable or one of the most valuable companies, depending on what day you're at. He set out to make something beautiful. And that disrupted. I'm no longer an Apple fan, and I will hold forth on why I dislike modern Apple. But if I pull the phone out of my pocket or the phone out of my backpack, it was just and it didn't back then. In 2007, most phones had keyboards or something like that. I mean, he revolutionized the internet. Now grandma can order from Amazon.com. But he didn't do it for the money. He did it because he felt he was making something beautiful. And you really, really want that. Build something beautiful. Again, have fun. And the money will come. Trust me. I'm constantly surprised when we actually make money. Because I'm like, what? You know, I went to work today and I had fun and I paid for it. That's really kind of cool. So go with your gut. I do want to point out, just so no one thinks I'm violating the code of conduct, that is a forearm. It's a very unfortunately placed forearm. I did not take this picture. Someone set up a Wikipedia page for me, and this was my Wikipedia picture. But go with it. Again, I'm pretty open to self-deprecation, but it's like, go with your gut. I mean, if it feels right. I'm a firm believer in this concept of karma. And I know I would insult Hindus by pretending to even know what the formal definition of karma is, but the informal definition of do good things and good things will happen to you has worked for me. And I want to end this talking about doing good things. How many of you have heard of Smile on Amazon.com? Yeah, use it. You know, Amazon.com, they have this thing where if you go to Smile on Amazon.com, you can choose a charity. And Amazon will give a really small amount of money for every purchase you buy. And my charity of choice is the Software Freedom Conservancy. It used to be EFF until I found the Software Freedom Conservancy was available. And I wish you could split them. I guess you just have to remember to go in and switch it every so often. And I'm kind of sad that I'm responsible personally for more than 10% of all the money that has gone to the Software Freedom Conservancy. But use it. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything. All you got to do is remember to go to smile.amazon.com. And on the final note, I want to talk about supporting this conference, because I've had a blast. If you see anyone with a supporter badge, it means they paid money to be here. There should be no embarrassment in having an enthusiast badge, because that's why we're here. But if you can support this. We have money, but we don't have enough to be like a sponsor or anything. I sent the OLF $500. So I said, you know, we can give you $500. We don't even want any recognition. They were kind enough to put us as a sponsor on their website, but I said, you know, I believe in you guys enough. I can afford $500. Here's $500. And we also sponsored the raffle. So there is a raffle with lots of cool things. And Beth Lynn has done a great job about bundling all the things together so they're actually cool. So if you know about the raffle, you buy raffle tickets. You do not have to be a present to win, but they will text you. And you will need to reply within a certain amount of time before someone else gets whatever your video is. What I brought, what we paid for, was a Mycroft in the box. Anyone know Mycroft? So if you want to talk to me later about how horrible Alexa and Echo and Google Home and all those things are, I read 1984 before it was 1984. Mycroft is an open source project that I've played with. Is it ready for prime time? No. It's kind of fun though. But what I found out is you take a Raspberry Pi 3, burn this image called Pycroft onto a micro SD card, hook up a Java combination speaker and microphone, and you've got a microphone. And it works really, really well. There's one change you have to make. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can find it. And there's just one small change you have to make to get it to use the speaker on the USB instead of the HDMI port. But that's what we donated. There's a lot of other really cool presents. So go buy your raffle ticket. The odds are pretty good you'll win something nice. Anyway, that's it. What are we doing for time? Sorry. This is me. AdventuresiNOSS.com is my open source blog. I have a few other blogs. So if you go to Tarus.io, because all the cool kids have .io /planet, that's kind of an RSS feed with all of my posts and rants. I'm on the Twitters and I'm on the Google Pluses. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for not falling asleep, and I hope you had a great time.
So I just want to state for the record that Tarus stole my business model, spend less money than you make. We're running a little over, but let's take a couple questions. If you raise your hand, I saw one hand. Who's the second hand? Well, I'll start with the one. Not escaping quite yet.
No beer for you.
Okay, you spoke a little bit about some of the setbacks, but talk to me about your toughest failure and how you overcame it.
My toughest, man, you're going to come for a clip. This is the Tarus Balog, This Is Us. I just binged it. Do not binge This Is Us, because it's like emotionally wrenching. 2009, we made a bet that we would get a lot more revenue than we did. And I had to lay people off. I didn't think I was joking about the verklempt bit, but I am getting a little verklempt. You know, when you work with people, they're like your friends, at least in open source. And to have to actually call somebody up and say, look, you know, I made a mistake, and for the good of the company, I have to let you go. It's painful. And so that's it. And so we did two things. We did pretty deep layoff. We only had 3 people off. So I did a pretty deep layoff. And we were like 9 people at the time. So it was a pretty short layoff because I said, look, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this once. I'm never going to lay anybody off again. We'll shut the doors before I lay anybody off. And so far we've been fine. I mean, that was 8 years ago. But that was probably the hardest part of this job. And you've got to sometimes make hard decisions. You've got to fire customers. You've got to let people go. And I don't mind. I mean, there's only been a handful of people I've had to fire and say, you're not working out. But to take people who were working out really well that I just couldn't afford was tough.
Another option for small businesses for health insurance is getting group coverage through the local chamber of commerce.
So the statement is, for those of you who can't hear, is apparently local chamber of commerces will let you get group coverage.
Yeah, they'll have a group of other small businesses and they'll get a group rate.
You definitely want the group. I mean, because then it becomes, you know, there's no pre-existing conditions. It's basically, you know, what age are you? Here's how much you pay. And in OpenNMS, I pay 100% of the employee's premiums. I broke it away. Having health is dreadfully important to my business, and so, we just got a new insurance broker. And he's like, you do what? And I'm like, yeah. I said, we don't cut you. You can get pre-tax for spouse and family, but for the individual, we pay 100% of their premium. And we also had spousal support and long-term disability and all of that stuff. It took us a while. Because if you just start out, no one's going to give you long-term disability. But after a while, you can. And once you get bigger, it actually, the rates, you know, I am painfully aware of the cost of healthcare in this country. And it's something that needs to be done. But, you know, I talk about that over a few beers. But
By the way, you can still buy healthcare plans from Costco.
you can. No, this is a 401k. Can you do 401ks from Costco?
I didn't check, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Because I looked it up. Because I had to dig that graphic out of like an old presentation. But yeah, they're just. And that's the reason I put that up there was it's funny. you know, give me a pack of Slim Jims and some 401k. But a big pack of Slim. But the other thing is, you know, I put it there mainly to get creative. You know, the thing with our business plan, spend less money than you earn. I mean, we have an idea of where we want to go and where we're going to spend our money, where we want to focus our effort. But, you know, get creative. There's no reason that says you have to fit in the mold that you've been told. Because open source opens itself up to a lot of unique ways to interact with your customers. I never felt cleaner. Because when I was working with Micromuse and stuff like that, I remember once, Bank of America, I said I never told this story before because I'm dropping a lot of things. I did work for Bank of America before they were merged with Nations Bank, and they bought Concord Network Health, like a $500,000 instance of Concord Network Health. I went up to work on it. I went to California when they're way out on the end of Bart. I forget where it was. I realized like 2 hours in, for their need, they bought the wrong product. I said I didn't sell it, But I worked really, really hard to make the product kind of shoehorn into what they wanted. So I hire a guy. So I can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and I can buy the same pipes and fittings that he can buy. You know, but he's the expert and he does it a lot faster and I just pay him money and I realized I should have gone to plumbing school. And then, but the idea is, and that's what I tell people, I say, you're just paying for my time. We had this one, the first customer I had who dropped open ended support. It was a hospital in Virginia. And I called them up and said, hey, your renewal's up, are you going to renew? They said, no. I said, what's going on? I haven't seen any tickets, I haven't seen any problems. Why aren't you renewing? And it's because we haven't had any tickets or problems. It's like, it just works for us, and we don't need your support. And it's like, you know, it's like, but it's a good feeling. I feel really clean because no one has ruined their career on a bad decision sold to them by a sales guy.
Big hand for Tarus. Thanks so much. All right, we're almost done here, but not quite yet. I want to take a brief moment to recognize the people who helped bring this event to you today. If you're one of the 14 volunteers who helped over the past couple of days, please stand up. They're hiding in the back there. Thanks so much. In addition to the 14 volunteers, we have 9 people on the core staff who meet weekly leading up to the event. On Sundays at night, taking time away from their family and their friends to help make this happen for you. All the folks in the yellow shirts, please come up front real quick. This is one of the few times we did a photo together. So you guys are awesome. And I want to recognize Vance briefly. Vance has been our speaker chair for the past several years, and he did so with very little notice. And he turned in his resignation as speaker chair earlier this year. But opposed to just running off and saying, peace, see you guys, have fun, good luck, he stuck around over the past year and put together this fine program for you. Tarus, he spent so much time reaching out to people and sorting through all the submissions we get to put this program together for you. Fortunately, he's not leaving our team. I'd be very sad if that were the case. But he's changing roles. So big hand to Vance for all his efforts. Not everyone's here, so I'm not going to call out everyone individually, but if you see somebody with a yellow shirt or one of these fancy plastic name tags, at the after party, please take a moment to recognize what they did. We're always looking for help, both small and big. There's many ways you can contribute. So please talk to us if you're interested. We'd love to find a way how you can help us make next year even better. Next year, this is a new thing we're doing, and I love it. It makes me happy because we can plan and work towards it. October 12th and 13th. Come up here, Carol. Come up here. Come stand with us. We're almost done. October 12th and 13th, 2018. I've been saying 2017, but it's really next year. 2018. Mark it on your calendars. Tell your companies and the companies you do business with that you do business with the companies who sponsor Ohio LinuxFest, and have them contact us at sponsors@ohiolinux.org. With that, we're still selling raffle tickets, thanks to Susan's efforts. Up front, buy them on your way out and over to the after party. The after party is directly behind us on the other side in the Delaware room. We're getting set up, we're going to have food, drink, and have a great time. I look forward to seeing everyone there. Anything you want to add before we finish? Beth? Anyone else?
The after party is free as in beer. Yes, free as in beer. And it's brought to you by you. Thank you so much for being our after party sponsor. You can thank us by participating in the raffle if you put in your Raffle ticket. Here are the rules. We're going to pull the prize approximately at 8. We'll send you a text message to say, congratulations, you won a prize. And it will be the prize that you won, and you'll have approximately 10 minutes in which to respond. If you do not respond, we will proceed to the next winner. Unless it's one of the special prizes in which it is issued by email. That's the LPI certification opportunity or the Linux Foundation online trainings, which are delivered by email. Thank you so much. You mean the world to me. We couldn't do it without